This is Devin with the CRP, and this is a recap of Bellator 223. Over the weekend, Bellator went to London, England, and put on a 19-fight card there in London, headlined by a middleweight title bout between then middleweight champion Gegard Mousasi and undefeated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu phenom Rafael Lovato Jr. And here's the result. Rafael Lovato Jr. dethrones officially Gegard Mousasi to become the new Bellator middleweight champion. And when we look at this fight, coming out in the first two rounds, I think the first two rounds were very clearly in Lovato's favor. He was the heavier grappler. He was able to get Mousasi to the ground, control most of the action, pass Mousasi's guard. Mousasi stayed very relaxed and steady, didn't panic, kept regarding, managed to get through the rounds. Third round comes out, Lovato actually gets a takedown. Mousasi ends up scrambling, getting him back on top in the third round, and finishes the last couple minutes of the third round, really inflicting a lot of damage on Lovato, even cuts him open, and really, I think, stole that round. So I would have had the third round in Mousasi's favor. Fourth round comes out, and it's the most dominant round of the fight, and Mousasi drops Lovato, really puts a lot of pressure on him. Lovato didn't really get anything off in the round. You could have maybe even scored it to 10-8, which is what one judge did. And in that case, it would have been a draw, because when we go into the fifth round, I'll have a little conversation here in just a minute about whether Mousasi just fumbled the football or just didn't drop the ball, if you will, didn't show up in that fifth round, or if Lovato Jr. just found a second win and really persevered, pushed through, and did what he had to do to win. I think it's a little of both, but nevertheless, Lovato Jr. comes out, does what he needs to do, as I mentioned, gets the takedown, and just controls the whole fifth round. Mousasi does nothing. And Mousasi really fumbled the football in this round. I mean, he had this fight. The tide had definitely switched into his favor. He was taking over the fight. He arguably had won a 10-9 and a 10-8, so he would have been a little bit ahead in the scorecards. If you score that fourth round of 10-8, this is a draw, because Lovato clearly won 1, 2, and 5. Mousasi definitely won 3 and 4. It's just whether you score that fourth round a 10-8 or not. I have no problem with Lovato Jr. getting winning 3 rounds to 2, and the main reason for that is not because I don't know if technically we should be scoring that fourth round of 10-8 for Mousasi. It's the fact that he clearly won the fight, because Mousasi just did not show up when in crunch time in that fifth round. It's like he fell asleep coming out of that fifth round, and Lovato Jr. just woke up when he looked like he fell asleep for the fourth round and came out and got the takedown, stole the fight, becomes the new champion. I think that they should probably run this fight back. I think this is a really good fight. I think their styles match up well. I think Mousasi deserves it. I think Mousasi is still one of the best middleweights in the world. And, he had kind of a sluggish performance here, but I think he was dealing with a really good grappler with really good jiu-jitsu, and Lovato Jr. looked really big for this division. So, Lovato Jr., new champion, 35 years old, 10-0 in his MMA career, and he is the new Bellator middleweight champion. I think that a rematch between these two would be something I'd be fired up for, so I hope that they do that. But just profiling a few other of the fight, you got Melvin Manhoef comes back and gets a decision win against Copening in Melvin's backyard of London. Melvin's now 43 years old. He was coming off a pair of losses to Rafael Carvalho, but he comes back, he gets a win in London, so good for him there. Fair play, as they say over there, and I'm good to see him. I think that his career is definitely winding to an end, so fighting in his hometown and getting a win, I think that's great for Melvin. But the real co-main event of the night was Paul Daley versus Eric Silva. As I profiled in my preview, we knew what to expect with this fight. Both these guys love a good fist fight. They're both scrappers. Eric Silva, I think, came out and won the first round of this fight. But then the second round, Paul Daley took over. I definitely had that second round at 10-8. There was probably 3 different times in that second round that I thought the fight was going to get stopped. Daley cracks him with a big uppercut, really just applies so much pressure on him. Eric is just in recovery mode, in survival mode the rest of the round, and then the third round is really not much different. Paul really puts some heavy leather on him and just dominates the whole rest of the third round. So Paul Daley, coming off his loss to Michael Venom Page, scores a big decision win here. Moving on down the card, James Gallagher from the Irish team over there with Kavanaugh and McGregor picks up a decision win over Jeremy Labiano. And Gallagher, 22-year-old kid, he's got that brash Irish bad boy persona. He's on a good run. He had a tough loss a couple fights back, but he's won a couple since. 22 years old. He's developing right. I love to see this with Bellator right now. I thought this. I'm going to throw this in here in the middle of this video, but I thought the overall card was great, and I'm starting to see some young talent coming up in Bellator, and this was an impressive card, and I like to see more fights like this for a 22-year-old rather than what we've been seeing with Aaron Pico getting thrown in there a little too above his head way too soon. So I think Gallagher's got a big future ahead of him, and this was another good fight for him. Moving on down the line, there's 2 middleweights, young contenders that I want to profile. Starting with Fabian Edwards getting a big win over Jonathan Bosuku, and also another main card fight between Costello Van Steenis defeating Mike Shipman in the second round by TKO punches at 134 of the second round. Both these guys, I think, are up-and-coming guys here at middleweight for Bellator. Fabian Edwards, I profiled him in my preview, the younger brother of Leon Edwards, the UFC welterweight contender, who's getting ready to fight Rafael dos Anjos. Leon's on a 7-fight win streak in the UFC welterweight division. Fabian's undefeated. He climbed to 8-0. Good Bellator middleweight. And then Costello Van Steenis impressed me tremendously in this fight with Mike Shipman. Cracks him in the second round with an elbow in the clinch, rocks him, and then finishes him off on the ground. Looked very solid against a guy who's got some really good wrestling. So I think both these guys are names to watch out for, especially when you got Mousasi and Lovato up there at the top. You got these new contenders like Fabian Edwards and Costello Van Steenis coming up the ranks at the same time. There's also 2 women I want to profile. In the main card, you had Denise Kilholtz defeating Bryony Tyrell in the third round with TKO ground and pound, and you also had Kate Jackson cutting up Lena Ovchinnikova. I tried in the first round with elbows, and both these women are women's flyweights. They're both 125 pounders. I think both these women are putting themselves in contention to possibly fight Ilima McFarlane for her belt in the future. Ilima McFarlane is a very good champion for the Bellator. She's the most notable women fighter on their card, maybe the second best flyweight in the world behind the UFC champion Valentina Shevchenko. I think either one of these girls could possibly fight her moving forward. And they were both very impressive, got big finishes, knocked out their opponents, cut open their opponents. So one other fight I want to profile that I was really impressed with in the prelims is Alfie Davis, who defeated Jorge Canella. Alfie Davis, when we look at him, 27 years old, 12-3 overall. He's got a pair of wins in Bellator. Had some very good, elusive, karate-like striking in this fight. Was very impressive. So I think Alfie Davis is somebody we might see on a main card moving forward in Bellator. This was a good event for Bellator. I think we're going to get on here with Chad and Miguel and talk a little bit about Bellator becoming a possible competitor to the UFC. They've been consistent over a long period of time, and they're developing young talent. They've got some good champions. They're doing really good, and they've had a really good year. So props to Bellator. This was a good card. Stay tuned to the CRP for more updates.